If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
Imagine this scenario. Coordinated jihadi cells detonate shrapnel-packed IEDs at 3 crowded soft targets in a single American metro area inside a 30-minute window. Within the first hour, every level 1 trauma center in the region has locked its ambulance bays. ERs exceed capacity before the second wave even hits. Blood products, tourniquets, chest tubes, and surgical airway kits are gone by hour 2. EMS is stacking gurneys in hospital parking lots because there's nowhere to put them. Triage officers in blood-soaked scrubs are tagging patients black, meaning no treatment because the resources are simply not there. Tonight we're covering how fast the healthcare system will fold, and the primary enemy is the Jihadi terror network operating on American soil. The interlinked cells and lone actor operatives drawing from ISIS, ISIS-K, Al-Qaeda, AQAP, Hamas-aligned, and IRGC proxy ideology, now actively targeting soft targets inside the United States. These operatives study our civilian infrastructure, they map hostile locations, they calculate response times, and they train for mass casualty attacks designed specifically to overwhelm emergency medical capacity. This is exactly what they want. American families bleeding in parking lots while the nearest ER turns them away. Enabling the threat is the corporate emergency governance model, the just-in-time hospital conglomerate structure that has stripped American healthcare of the surge capacity needed to absorb a coordinated strike. Welcome to Survival Dispatch News. It's April 17th, 2026. I'm Chris Evans, the CEO of Survival Dispatch, joined tonight by combat wounded Green Beret Randy Nance, 26-year CIA case officer Jeff MD, and 24-year CBP special agent JJ Carroll. Bottom line up front, jihadi terrorists striking American soil and coordinated attacks will overrun our hospital systems within hours, exhaust critical supplies immediately, and force medical staff into brutal triage decisions, choosing who lives and who dies long before the crisis ends. Waiting for help may not be an option for your family when the ambulance never comes. So what we're covering tonight is how fast hospitals will become saturated, who controls the triage decisions, and what you must do right now to be your own first responder. So jumping into the first segment, the triage power shift. Who decides who lives when jihadis strike? The hospital collapse that follows a coordinated jihadi strike is not just a supply problem. It's a power transfer event where state authorities and corporate hospitals immediately activate crisis standards of care, protocols that legally override normal physician judgment and patient consent. Under these crisis standards, triage decisions shift from doctors to committees and regional medical coordinating officers who apply resource-based allocation formulas based on age, comorbidities, and estimated survival, meaning a bureaucrat you will never meet will decide whether your wounded child gets the last unit of blood. Every mass casualty event in modern history has been followed by permanent expansion of state medical authority. And when jihadis execute a successful coordinated strike on American soft targets, that emergency governance lever will tighten its grip on who receives care, how and on what timeline long after the smoke clears. So going straight to Jeff MD per usual. Jeff, when a hospital activates their quote unquote crisis standards of care, what actually changes for patient care in the first hour, and who's making the call?
Well, not a hospital guy, but I would imagine the person making the call are the doctors on duty in the ER, because they're the ones that have eyes on the patients. And what's going to happen is if you got the sniffles and you're in the emergency room, they're going to kick your ass out. You may have a broken arm. If you're in the emergency room, they may kick your ass out. They're going to do it's going to be the the people who are too injured to save. Okay. I'm sorry. They're going to say, can't do it. You're going to have the ones that they can save and the ones that they can save, but they can wait. And that's going to be probably 95% of the people who go to the ER, because sadly, we live in a society where we have people who go to the ER for the sniffles, or they go to the ER because they cut their finger. They don't really need to be in an ER. Maybe a local urgent care would suffice, but they go to the ER. And I hate to say, you're going to get old people with heart attacks that, they're going to say, okay, we're going to get you stable, but that's about it. I mean, what are they going to do? Open you up and do open heart massage? No, they're not. They're going to be worried about the people who have sucking chest wounds and, things like that.
So all of the people that I've spoken to who work in the hospital industry, Jeff, tell me that they all have relatively the same SOP, that if they have to go into this, quote unquote triage mode, that the facility goes into lockdown mode and they triage people outside in the parking lot, and only the people you get in who, are going to receive treatment. Randy, coming to you, I had a really interesting conversation with somebody from a Texas hospital today who's relatively high up in the food chain when it comes to this topic. And that guy he gave me a piece of information that I don't know if it's in place in Florida anywhere. I know it's not in place in Florida right here. How many times have we discussed a hospital being under siege and the bad guys just killing somebody, like a doctor or nurse, taking their key card so they could get access? There are most hospitals in Texas now, Randy, they have mag locks that activate under emergency, and everybody's stuck where they are. The cards don't work. So they could take a card off a doctor or nurse. They're not opening any doors whatsoever. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But here's a piece, just because Jeff touched on it, and I'll let you run with this one, Andy. So in the state of Texas, if public clinics are open and somebody has the sniffles, like Jeff said, they can be turned away from an emergency room in the state of Texas. But they all close at 6 p.m. And at 6:01 p.m., every illegal in the state of Texas who has any health issue, including the sniffles, goes to the county hospital and cannot be turned away. And the person I spoke to today said from 6:01 p.m. on, they can go into the waiting room of any ER, and there will be virtually no American citizens, and most of them won't even speak English. Just give me your thoughts overall on that part of collapse, Randy, because that's every night.
Well, it's like anything else that we've talked about, where the criminals, or in this case, maybe they're not all hard, straight up drug addict criminals or gang bangers, but if they're here illegally, they broke the law getting here, so they are a criminal. But you know what I'm talking about. But even them, learn the system, right? And because we're always the good guys, there's always a workaround, just like this right here. So, just as you well know, if you go into hospital, certainly in the state of Texas, they can't turn you away, because if they do and something happens to you, their family's going to sue and own that hospital or shut it down, one of the two. And, that's just kind of the way it goes. But it's like anything else, they're here to abuse the system in any way that they can, because they have nothing else and they have nothing to lose. And, once they figure it out, all we got to do is wait till after 6 o'clock. We're in. That's a pretty easy fix for them. There's got to be, I don't know what the metric has to be. And, that's probably above my pay grade. We need some attorneys and doctors and some other stuff in there to work this out to where that is not the case. There's got to be something else. The other part is I go back to the same old thing, man. If we would just get them out of here, we would have less problems. But apparently that's not going to happen. And the state of Texas is overrun with them just as much as anybody else. And it is the problem. When they overwhelm our medical systems, guess what happens to all of the rest of our health care and health insurance premiums? They all go up. It's a fact. And so, sometimes it just feels like we're stupid, right? We just allow people to constantly do this, but that's not really the truth. The problem is the people that are in charge that could stop all this are allowing it to happen. And again, it goes back to the same old thing we've said, including JJ, that this isn't people making mistakes. This isn't, we didn't know. We tried our best. This is intentional and it's very well thought out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's go to our resident expert on illegals here, JJ. I want to hear your thoughts on them gaming the system like this, because part of the downfall of our healthcare system, if and when there's a mass casualty event, they're already overburdened with the illegals, sucking up resources. I'm curious what your thoughts are, and how do they pass this information on? Like, do they have a abuse American healthcare and government welfare 101 for illegals? I'm just curious what the culture is behind this, JJ.
The one thing that, and the majority of all the illegal aliens that come to America from Central and Latin America and the stands and Africa, they're subpar in intellect. They are right there, right at or below, significantly below the demarcation of mental retardation. However, I will tell you this, that they are so highly connected as far as information gets given out. They know exactly how to game the system. They know where to go. And a lot of it is in the NGOs. The NGOs guide them. They guide the horse to the water, and then everyone else follows and then destroy it. This is not anecdotal, what I'm going to tell you from the border. I lived this. I lived where my agents would get hurt. We would take them to the hospital. There'd be several of our marked units in front of the hospital. And then the charge nurse, the head nurse, would come out and say, "Hey, I know I don't really want, but I have to ask you to do this. Can you please move your marked rides out of here? Because no one's coming in. Like, no one's here." Because the illegal alien population uses the emergency rooms as their general hospital, their 100%. General care. 100%. So yeah, so we're asked to leave. We're asked to leave, and in order for them to quote open up, back up. Americans have no idea how many billions and billions and billions of dollars we spend every month, not every year, every month, on healthcare for illegal aliens. And now we're seeing the effects of that. Long waits in line. I'll give you another. It's not anecdotal. This is exactly what happens all the time. I got really hurt and broke some ribs. I went into the hospital, and I was connected to an event in law enforcement. And I went into the emergency room in Los Angeles, and I stood there in extreme pain. And there were at least 50 illegal aliens in the waiting room. There was no one there except illegal aliens, and I can spot them a mile away. And I looked at the nurse, and she says, "You're part of this law enforcement." "Yes, ma'am, I am." And she put me into the front of the line. If that's not your situation, you will rot. You will rot for hours and hours and hours, because you are not important. The illegal aliens are important, unless they can sniff that you have a very good healthcare insurance, and then they'll gouge you. They'll gouge you because the white American, Black American, Hispanic American, you are going to pay for these tens of millions of illegal aliens.
Well, JJ, let me ask you this, maybe expand a little bit. So this is day-to-day stuff that's happening in hospitals across America, where the resources are being consumed by the illegals, and legitimate people who need care are not getting the care that they deserve. What happens in a mass casualty event with all the chaos, plus all of the illegals, whether they're injured in that attack or have something else going on? plugging the system up under those circumstances.
Well, I just saw something in the chat, and someone said the hospitals don't care because they're going to get reimbursed. But that's not true. There's hospitals across America, especially rural hospitals, are closing every single day because of the weight of illegal aliens not paying. So when you talk about a mass casualty event, we're not going to have enough hospitals. We're not going to have enough care. We're just not. It's a supply and demand issue. And when you start to this is what we've been talking about for the last several weeks on Fridays, is the infrastructure. The American infrastructure is built. I mean, just think of this just from a logical perspective. The infrastructure is built to service 340 million people. We have an infrastructure that is breaking under the weight of servicing at least 450 million people, because that's how many legal and illegal immigrants we have inside of our walls. So this is not even a mass casualty event. We're seeing our infrastructure begin to sway, and now it's going to break. Now you have a mass casualty event. Now we're talking about some severe problems. This is all supply and demand. That's all it is. And our leaders have allowed this to happen. Look what happened just yesterday on, I think it was 10 Republicans sided and voted with the Democrats to extend temporary protective status to over 350,000 Haitians. Correct. Haiti has massive medical care for Haitians, HIV, AIDS, the plethora of STDs, not to count all the the mental issues that they have to be dealt with. I believe, and one of your listeners said the Calvin Piven. That is truly what's happening, right? It's the overwhelming the system. They overwhelm the illegal alien immigration system. They're overwhelming our schools or hospitals, you name it. But when something happens, we're going to see it in real time. When there's a mass casualty event, we're going to see everything we're talking about, unfortunately, materialize, and everyone's going to be like, what happened to America? I'm telling you right now, I don't recognize America as I drive around in my job. I don't. And not one bit do I recognize America. It looks more and more. I'm going to tell you, it's shocking to me. This is the one of the things shocked me when I went back to work and have to go and drive around into America. We are becoming a third world. Our inner cities are becoming third world hellholes.
Yeah, true story. I'm a little bit concerned, JJ, that we haven't got your blood pressure up yet. So it's actually going to start here with Jeff. By the time I get back to you, I'm expecting your heart rate, blood pressure to be.
Well, just tell Jeff, don't talk about Botox or anything personal. Let's stick to the subject today, okay?
Okay, we won't mention your facelift.
See, look at that. Now it's stress on my face. Jeff, you ruined everything that I paid for.
What you need to do is stand up and turn around so we can see the Brazilian butt lift.
Oh, there's a mental image for all y'all.
Come on, Chris, get control of your panel, please.
Yeah, the panel. So, Jeff, I mean, you're super well educated on every topic out there. So I'm assuming that you're familiar with triage categories of, red, yellow, green, black tags that they put on people in a triage situation. Okay, so are you familiar with these regional medical coordinating officers that work in the state health departments? Because I wasn't until I investigated this topic.
No, I'm really not that well versed in how state hospital systems work. I try to avoid them like the plague.
For sure, people are dying to get in there.
Yeah.
So let me tell you what they are and what they do. And then I want to hear your perspective on it. And this will prime JJ to get his blood pressure up a little bit. So they're called regional medical coordinating officers that work through the state health departments. They have the legal ability to override individual hospital decisions during a state of emergency. So they essentially seize control of everything. They seize control of the beds, ventilators, blood, staff. They override local hospital decisions to redistribute resources where they decide the need is the greatest. This is like the worst possible nightmare you could have as far as bureaucrats are concerned. So give me your take on that, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically HR for the hospitals. We get to decide everything. We know nothing about what you do, but we get to decide. It's the administrators deciding if you need a heart transplant or not. What I think would happen in that situation if they came in and tried to run roughshod over the doctors have huge egos, and there's a lot of them that would probably tell the administrator guy to go pound sand. And if you have, okay, so you're in there, you're a parent, you're in there with your child, and your child's been injured in an attack, and it's sucking chest wound, something very serious. And the doctor says, yeah, I can't treat your child because this bureaucrat from Phoenix is in here telling us that, we can't save your kid. I would be like, show me the bureaucrat and give me 5 minutes to get back to my car. And then, someone's going to come in, they're going to put a gun to the guy's head and say, yeah, you're not doing that. When you start messing with people's loved ones, they don't have a lot of patience for that crap. So these bureaucrats, they look like they may have that kind of authority on paper. In real life, I don't think it would play out that way. It's sort of like your homeowners association coming to your house in the middle of a crisis saying, sorry, you can't put up a barricade because that's against HOA rules. Who's going to listen to that crap? Nobody. They're going to say, get out of here, Karen, or you're going to become part of the barricade.
Yeah, let's hope so. Backwoodsman, great comment here. DEI supply redistribution. That's hit the nail on the head. So, Randy, you're in a pretty unique position on this topic, being a former paramedic on an ambulance and then a Green Beret with combat experience. I'm curious, like from your perspective, how does battlefield triage compared to civilian mass casualty triage? And do you think that the American public really has their head wrapped around that when you have these serious mass casualty events that certain people are just not going to be helped?
Probably not, because we haven't had to deal with too many, right? At first, I will say that, combat triage is very similar to mass casualty triage, right? Because you don't have a lot of time to waste and more people could be dying right now, correct? So, and furthermore, in combat, the bullets usually are still flying. And, but the triage goes the same, just as y'all described earlier, almost perfectly. You know what I mean? You're going to have those that they know are not going to survive. They're going to try to make them as comfortable as they can and move on. Then you're going to have the kind in the middle that they know they're going to survive, but they can wait. And then, of course, it's like any emergency triage. The people that are most critical at the moment for life and limb and eyesight are going to be treated first, period. And of course, life being the most, having the highest priority level. And so that's no different. I think the good thing is a lot of the emergency period is like a lot of other things that came out of combat, right? And learning how to treat combat injuries, and certainly in an austere environments that may be with a high level of stress and action going on at the exact moment that you need to do this, as we've all heard and seen the stories. But, I think in this day and time, we as Americans, as we just mentioned, most Americans aren't even aware of how bad it is because of the illegal aliens that are absorbing up all this medical attention and in all the hospitals that, again, at the end of the day, we have to end up paying for. And, then you mass on a mass casualty. What happens, like, even if it's not a mass casualty, sometimes on full moon nights, believe it or not, there is something about full moon night. It's not just movies and songs that we saw. It's a fact. And anybody that's worked in law enforcement or first responders understand this, because on full moon nights, just weird things happen and a lot of things happen. So, and in that instant, though, there are nights that like here in Dallas, things get busy, and they could get busy enough. I don't know if I'm certain Parkland has too, But they're not the only level 1 trauma center in this area. But sometimes, like even when I was on an ambulance way back in the day, there would be an ambulance that already taken in too many emergencies into the emergency room, and they would have to divert you to another trauma, level 1 trauma, or whatever level you needed. And you wouldn't, even as an ambulance, where you would not go into that hospital because you know that it was too busy. And that's what you're going to see here. Mass casualties will shut down any one hospital, and in certain areas more than that. And you know, but go to speak of what we know, what the plan would be if this actual attack materializes. They're looking at where there's only one tier 1 level trauma center. And when that thing shuts down because it's too busy, long before the jihadis get there to shut it down themselves the next day, it will happen just through emergency services. And, you know, when that happens, then Americans are going to see real strife, because that means everybody that's not dying gets pushed off to the side. So, you know, even if you're iffy, that may not be enough. You may get pushed off to the side because there's others that are definitely critical, and they know if they don't have medical intervention, shortly they will die. So then it'll come down to who needs it the most, and everybody else will just have to embrace and suck it through.
Yeah.
But no, and to my point, to your question, the American citizens as a whole are not ready for that, because we're used to, again, being in the land of milk and honey and plenty. Everything we've ever needed, whether we wanted to go to the hospital or to 7-Eleven, we've had it all.
Yeah, no kidding. So, JJ, lots of different sources have released intelligence that basically shows that these jihadi networks have analyzed multiple hospitals here in America, like, and their infrastructure, right? So in other words, they map out where every major hospital is, what their bed capacity is, ICU numbers, blood bank stocks. And they also, this is pretty crazy. I mean, you guys know this. Our hospitals now run on JIT, just like our grocery stores, just in time. They don't stock a whole bunch of extra stuff like they used to in years gone by because of the almighty dollar. I want to hear your thoughts, JJ, on we know that they've been scoping out these hospitals, and yet we've taken no action, nothing.
Well, I think that it's just, you're right, it's a money thing, and it's a supply and demand. And if we do get hit, and you've had Khalib on, he tells you it's not an if, it's a when, and how bad it's going to be. So when it does happen, I just don't think we're ready. And I honestly, to the government's defense as well, and the hospitals, I don't think, how do you prepare for that? Like, who's going to fund that state of preparedness? Who's going to do it? We don't have the money. We're $40 trillion in debt. We just spent, for the last, 45 days bombing Iran at $1 billion a day, but we don't have the money and the resources and quite frankly the desire to prepare for these type of things. And that's the sad, that comes back to America first, and why everyone's losing their mind over illegal immigrants and sending money to overseas, is we just simply don't care about our own country. We don't care. We don't have any savings. I believe America is on the brink. I believe America has been on the brink for quite a while, and it's getting to the point where we're going to get to the point of no return. And any slight issue, maybe it's a mass, Mother Nature incident, it's still going to have the same effect. We're not going to be able and ready to do it. Look what we did for Biden under 4 years when the hurricane hit Asheville, North Carolina, and destroyed all those people's lives and property. They actually came out. The Secretary of DHS came out and said, "I'm sorry, we don't have any money. FEMA doesn't have more money." Well, and then he admitted, because we gave it to the NGOs to help the illegal aliens. I mean, this is what we're discussing right now is not theoretical table talk. We've already lived through it multiple times. So when that does hit, we're going to have the same reaction from our government. We don't have the money. We don't have the resources. And then it's going to be a free-for-all. That's when it's going to get really crazy.
Yeah, it's not a pretty picture whatsoever. So, Jeff, I know where you're going to go with this question as far as when, governments grab power after a significant event, calamity, they never give it back. Like once they take the power,
Yeah.
then they're not giving it back.
What you mean that temporary income tax is still around?
Yeah, to fund the First World War. That's right.
Yeah.
So give me your thoughts on this. Right now, apparently, the federal bureaucracy has the lowest head count we've had in America since the early 1960s. Okay.
Thank you, Trump.
So square that against these rules and regulations and laws that have taken power away from local, regional, and state agencies and handed it over to the feds. They're the ones who claim they have the power to make all of the decisions in these mass casualty events, major calamities, but they're operating with the least number of employees, which I'm not against, but that seems pretty juxtaposed to me.
Being technically in charge of anything doesn't mean you're actually doing anything. You can order people to do, if you have the authority to order the states to do X, Y, and Z, how many people does it require to tell them that? The feds, they're not actually doing the work. They're just watching people do it and saying, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. Wait, no, you got to do that instead. No, got to treat that guy, not that guy. They're not actually treating anybody. They're just telling you who you can treat and who you can't treat. That doesn't require a lot. And a lot of them are just SOPs and regulations that are in place. And as long as the local, state, and local governments follow those SOPs, the federal government has done its job. They're not, it's just like they can regulate transmission lines. The federal government doesn't hire linemen. They don't have any linemen to climb a pole and make sure something works. No, they just tell the utilities how to do it. And generally, the people telling the utilities how to do it don't know shit.
Well, as you're saying that, I don't know if anybody else had this thought cross their mind, but all I could think of was the base chief in Benghazi telling all of these top tier guys what they can and cannot do.
Exactly.
And it resulted in, the death of 4 Americans. That was unnecessary.
I had that when I was in the agency. I was arguing with headquarters about a case, and I had some analyst or some wonk at headquarters trying to tell me this, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do this. I'm like, what are you talking about? Well, we have determined that in this case, the asset we need to do this with this asset. And I go, wait a minute. You don't know anything about this person except what I told you. In the entire CIA, I am the only person who has ever even met this guy. And you're an expert on him? And you're telling me how to do it? Wow. I don't think so. And they kind of shut up and backed away, but they do it because they can get away with it. Word from on high, thou shalt do the following. And unless you push back, they're successful.
Yeah, good point. Good point there. Randy, again, coming from being a paramedic and, dealing with hospitals during emergency situations, I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this one as well, but I want to hear it from your firsthand experience. What happens to the chronic care patients, like people who need dialysis? They've got cancer, maybe they've got cardiac issues, they're insulin dependent. What happens to them when crisis standards kick in and you've got all the resources diverted towards the trauma victims?
Well, the good thing is both of those have their own modalities now. They don't really rely on the emergency room per se or those assets. The people that are on dialysis, they have dialysis clinics, and that's where they go. And that's generally where their doctors are as well, or at least somewhere in a medical facility next to it or something to that effect. So I really, it's when there's no money or electricity that those folks are going to have a real problem. But I think that just because all of a sudden the emergency room's overwhelmed and every emergency room is overwhelmed, I don't think it's going to affect them as much as you think. Because again, they don't have to go through the emergency room, and but there are cancer facilities and there are dialysis facilities, and they stand alone on their own now. Because that's how much money they're making.
It always comes back.
As JJ said, they're going to milk that. And as you know, my girlfriend's been sick for 3 years, man. And in my opinion, now there's been a lot of great doctors and they've helped her tremendously. But the fact is they've all milked that insurance policy like nobody's business more than anything else. And as smart as these people are supposed to be and as good as these doctors are and as experienced as they are, they always, the entire 3 years, they seem to be in reactive mode instead of proactive mode. When something shows up, that's when they finally, now let's find out what that is and do something about it. So that's, but again, those people will be in those facilities. It's just when it comes down, if we don't have any electricity, then that will be a really bad day for those folks if those facilities don't have some sort of permanent backup power solution.
Yeah, you said a mouthful there. JJ, I'm going to take us off script from the brief here for a second before we go into the second segment. I want to get your opinion on something that was recently brought to my attention. That's another aspect of hospitals being kind of front and center in these types of, mass trauma events, casualty events. Did you know that the federal government gives out grants to Muslims who want to open mosques in hospitals in every single state? The feds are giving money out to do that. And that then you end up with only the imam has a key to said mosques. And mosques are like, they're a battle station. They're not religious places. So they end up with Lord knows what's loaded up inside these mosques as far as weapons are concerned. Give me your thoughts. Here we are cutting our own throat again, that the feds are giving money out to open mosques in our hospitals.
Well, I think it's everybody and everything except Americans. And I honestly, Chris, I don't know, what is it going to take for Americans to wake up, like as a whole, and then fight back? And we've been asking that question, or at least I've been asking that question for a long time. And I don't see the threshold of pain being met. I just don't. We continue. Look what happened with Doge. Look what Elon Musk did, where they were exposing the hundreds of millions of dollars for LGBTQ sex initiatives in like Uganda and places like that. And people are like, well, that sucks, we shouldn't do that. But they didn't stop it. So you're going to give Muslims, why don't we have Catholic churches built into the hospitals? Who's the lady from Britain that gets her name's Katie? She's a blonde hair older lady, but she's brutal, she's ruthless. And she made the comment that you just made. Stop looking at mosque or places to pray for Muslims as like we look at churches. Look at where they're building them. They're building them in strategic locations. Like she says, why are mosques in England and in the UK being built all the way in the middle of nowhere on beachheads? Because they're beachheads. Same thing in the hospitals. But why are we doing this? We've lost America. We have lost the white European settled America that was Christian based. And this is not something that just happened slowly over 100 years. This is about a 15-year take from about 2010 to now that we saw what's happened for decades materialize. And now we're looking at the demographic destruction of America. And where do you think that money in space comes from? That comes from your tax dollars. We're being taxed this April, right? So everybody's writing their checks to the government. Katie Hopkins, yep, thank you. So we're writing checks to the government so that we can give it to foreign nationals that are here, people that don't believe in our Savior, do not share our cultural norms and values, and we're shipping it all overseas. It's maddening. To me, it's maddening.
Well, I think another piece, and I believe I mentioned it this week already, but I'll say it again. One of the reasons that white people aren't having kids is because we're paying for everybody else's. Our tax dollars are being consumed by the fresh air inspectors who have 7 babies from 7 different men. I watched a video today, JJ, of a mother and daughter sitting in a car, and they're waiting for an IVR, like a phone system, to give them an answer on what the status was for the daughter's, social assistance. And it comes back and it says, you have 2,000 whatever and change in your account, and they start celebrating and get out of the car and into Walmart they go. I call them fresh air inspectors because that's about all they're good for. But we're paying for those. Like that young girl in that particular video had 3 kids with her, and she looked like she was maybe 20 years old, and she's celebrating us giving her the money for free. There's no
that's a whole different topic, right? When you start talking about demographics and who is actually taking, and who are the takers and who are the givers. I mean, then a lot of people don't want to have that discussion, Chris. That scares them absolutely to death, to have an open demographic racial discussion on what's happened to America, because we've been propagandized to believe for decades that we are a nation of diversity and we are a melting pot. And that is, when you look at the data, the demographic data, that is a lie. It's a lie.
Yeah, the big thing that gets me out of that, JJ, is people say, well, white people need to go have more kids. We can't have kids when you're paying for everybody else's kids because there's no money left to cover it. Kids are expensive. So, like I say, the fresh air inspectors get it, but the rest of us don't. Yeah. Quick mention here before we jump into segment number 2. So Survival Dispatch Remnant is going to launch a week from tomorrow. This is a fictional audio podcast that'll be at 7 p.m. Eastern every Saturday and Sunday. And it follows the trials and tribulations of the Smith family. So you can think of this as a much more realistic version of The Walking Dead. And there's the Smith family right there. And again, you'll hear more about them a week from today because I've made an executive decision. We have 8 episodes left in the Long War, but the last episode of the Long War has to happen before Remnant starts, which means I'm going to nuke 4 episodes, and next Friday's the end of the Long War series. And that way Saturday we can jump into Remnant. So go sign up for free, and I'll put the link in the chat here in just a second. It's survivaldispatchremnant.com, takes you to our Substack. But if you sign up as a subscriber before it launches next Saturday, it's 20% off. So it's like $5.60 a month or $56 a year. You will get access to the podcast at 12 noon on Saturday and Sundays instead of 7 p.m. You will also get the show notes that go with it. The free subscribers, they'll get the podcast at 7 o'clock at night, but they won't get the show notes that has all the extra information in it. On top of this being entertainment in a post-apocalyptic world, there's going to be a lot of subtle survival information that's applied to the Smith family and other families. They're not the only families in this. I've written the first 104 episodes, by the way, which is 52 weeks worth, since it'll be every Saturday and Sunday. So survivaldispatchremnant.com. If you sign up for a subscription before next Saturday, you get 20% off. I'm not going to be running any discounts on memberships over there because the cost for the software that I'm using for this is very expensive. I just can't afford to be running more promos other than this very first one. So with that being said, we will get into segment number 2, the supply chain strangulation, why American hospitals run dry in hours. American hospitals operate on a just-in-time inventory model that I just mentioned, and most hospitals typically have 48 to 72 hours of critical consumables on the shelf. So the first wave of mass casualty patients from any type of coordinated mass casualty attack is going to burn through all of the tourniquets, chest tubes, hemostatic gauze, sutures, everything before the sun sets that day. And blood supply is the first hard wall that hospitals will hit, with most facilities carrying less than 20 units of O negative on hand, just as an example. And the regional blood bank requiring hours. Like it's not like the regional blood bank all of a sudden dispatches blood and you have it in the blink of an eye. It takes time to mobilize that and get that out to the hospitals. And that's time that trauma patients just don't have when they're bleeding from, gunshot wounds, shrapnel wounds, other types of heinous wounds. So the walking wounded phenomenon, it compounds the collapse because about 60% of casualties self-transport during mass casualty events. I was really surprised when I came across that number, but they typically drive themselves, to the nearest hospital, and they bypass that EMS triage entirely. So that now the ER is buried, not just trying to treat the people who are injured, but trying to triage them, and outside the facility as well, I suppose, unless it's pouring rain outside. But I mean, it's not hard to see how they get buried really, really fast. So, Jeff, I want to get just your opinion on what you think in your mind would be the first 5 critical supplies that a trauma center runs out of during a mass casualty event. And then what does that look like to the staff who are on the floor, who are trying to treat people, and they've run out of those 5 critical supplies?
Well, I think one of them is going to be blood plasma. Well, you're going to run out of cross-match blood, cross-type, that like O-neg and that, going to have many products, because I don't think they keep that much blood on hand. In fact, I used to donate blood routinely before I had some medical issues that wouldn't let me anymore. And they used to call me to say, can you come donate blood? We have someone undergoing surgery today.
Wow.
Because I had really high hemoglobin levels in my blood. And so the Red Cross would call me to say, can you come down to donate today? They don't, and that's the Red Cross. Now, an individual hospital, they're going to get their blood from a blood bank, Red Cross and others. But there's going to have a limited amount, because blood has a shelf life, and blood is expensive. You got to buy it. And they don't keep that much around. A major hospital will have more than a regional hospital or a small city hospital, but they're going to run out of blood. Then they're going to probably, plasma. They're going to run out of plasma. And then normal saline, yeah, you can stock that stuff to the ceilings. That's not as big a deal. Certain specialty bandages, I think, specialty equipment, chest tubes, things like that. They probably have a lot, but intubation tubes, if everybody coming in needs to be intubated, they're going to need a lot of intubation tubes. And those are one-use, throw them away items. These are not clean them and reuse them. So everything is disposable now. So if you don't have it, you're not, you can't reuse it. So yeah, I think blood's going to be the first one. And then I think a lot of the specialty items, disposable specialty items.
So yeah, I don't disagree with you. It's a good take on your part, Jeff. Randy, you were probably familiar with this being a paramedic, but I wasn't familiar with the concept of surge capacity, that when you have these, large casualty events, that the hospitals have like SOPs for it, blah, blah, blah. I figured they have SOPs, but I'd never heard the term surge capacity. But just like every other industry, you've got all this consolidation where you've got these big corporate conglomerates buying everything up. Like, for example, here's one that I didn't know until recently. 80% of the veterinarians in America now are owned by large national conglomerates. And you get the care that you would expect from a large corporate conglomerate, and not a vet who's a member of your community, owns the business and does it because he loves doing the thing, or she does, right?
Well, furthermore, you get their pricing also.
Bingo. Yep. 100%. Mm-hmm. So I want to get your thoughts on the consolidation of hospitals into a hand of these corporate conglomerates. And again, I wasn't familiar with the term surge capacity, but what I found when I was researching this episode is they've nuked it. They don't give a shit about surge capacity because it's all JIT. It's all just in time. They've pretty much undone everything that was done over years, especially post 9/11.
Well, again, you got to ask yourself, why is that? Any rational, sane person, citizen, government official should be asking yourself that exact question. Why is that? And to me, it just lends in the same old thing, right? Because this is planned out. It's very well thought out, and it's in every aspect of life. And, if they don't have enough blood, guess what happens? People die because they needed the blood. That's what happens. And, this surge, it's because just like anything else, we've learned over time, I'll just take rioting, as we've talked about many times, and riot control. and how it was so obvious about January 6th, because it's not how you handle riots.
Mhm.
And we've had those measures worked out for centuries now, because, you know, even back in monarchs, they had, at times they made enough mistakes that people rioted. So, you know, we know what the science is behind that, right? And how to end a riot. And, you know, but they didn't do that on January 6th. They did the exact opposite. And this is no different, because it's no different than, you know, 6 families own all the media. Now we've only got these few families that own all, or this one corporation or several corporations that own all the medical facilities. What does that mean? Well, at one time in lockstep, they can make a decision and every one of them will go with it. And that doesn't, you know, that includes, hey, well, we're just not going to, well, we'll take California, for example. How is it that you end up emptying all the water out and turning off all the spigots right before you have a big fire? And during a time period when you know it's summertime and the Santa Ana winds come blowing through there and any fire will just take off. How does that happen? It had to be planned. You can't be that stupid. Same thing with this. You know, now they own all the medical facilities, and lockstep at once, they can say, we're not going to treat these people, or we don't have enough blood, or, oh my goodness, it's closed. And people are going to die because of every one of those decisions.
It's like Jeff Nicholas says, too stupid to be stupid. You know?
Well, I say it all the time, you know, you have to look at it as a whole, and there's no way, because the people that these families that are running all this, the people they hire are the best and the brightest. That's why they pay them that kind of money. The problem is now they're evil, obviously, because if you are implementing these kind of plans on all of society, it's because you are evil. And they went and got the smartest people to work this out. And that's why I've said all along, you can tell how smartly all of it's worked out because of how effective it's going to be when it happens. And then how everything, whether it be the water, the medical supplies, food, all of it will just dry up in an instant. And somehow, oh gosh, we don't have any more. Why? Because they knew this was coming. And it leads all to this moment.
For everybody in the audience who has put their tinfoil hat on in honor of Randy Nance, please put a 1 in the live chat. I'm just trying to identify all of the conspiracy theorists amongst us. So if Randy inspired you to put your tinfoil hat on, put a 1 in the live chat. So JJ, when I was researching this topic, one of the things, and I had an inkling of it, but I didn't know this 100%, but our blood supply on a national basis, and again, it's set up for this JIT just in time stuff. You only need a handful of attacks and the blood bank supply is gone in the blink of an eye. Like I saw some estimates, you know, as quickly as an hour, for crying out loud, in some regions. In other regions it said, you know, inside the same day. But here's the next piece that we haven't talked about much. And Khalid did mention it way back when, and it occurred to me while I was putting this brief together. What would you say to the fact, JJ, that there's intelligence that the jihadis have not only mapped out these hospitals, they've mapped out the blood banks and have plans to take out the blood banks during their attack? I mean, that's downright devious, evil. I don't know how else to describe it.
Well, you know, we have an enemy, and you have to give it to the enemy because they have the mindset that if we're going to have to go to war, then we're going to attack everything. And I think that's a survival instinct. And you're talking about blood. I mean, think about how many people can't give blood now because their bodies have been damaged from COVID. I mean, there's constant talk about people going to give blood, and there's vaccinated and unvaccinated to make that declaration. So, I mean, think about what we've been through COVID. We talked about shortages just a minute ago. I lived through that. I lived through the shortages when I lived in South Carolina, where the government made the conscious decision to cut off certain medicines from conservative states. So you're telling me we have another Democrat run Congress and Senate and president that they don't going to sit there and they're going to make determinations on what state gets what based off of their political ideology? That's not hyperbole. That's not somebody coming up with some crazy theory. That happened already. So why wouldn't it happen again? And I think that's what we need to ask ourselves. When we're talking about these things, it's already been proven our government has made decisions solely based on politics. They don't care about you. And when things go bad and we're out of things, we already became out of things. Remember when we ran out of toilet paper? Remember when we ran out of Clorox wipes? I mean, dear God, we're talking about Clorox wipes. What do you think happens when we run out of blood? That's an amazing scenario to think of. But I live that. I live the idea that well, we don't have anything to give you. I remember the doctor telling me, we don't have anything to give you except remdesivir. And we gave me remdesivir 2 times within an 8-day stint in a hospital because Joe Biden wouldn't give certain medicines to South Dakota. We lived it already.
Spoken like a true podcaster who knows what your words to use and not to use, depending on what platforms you're sending stuff. I mean, we're still censored, right? If we said the things that you just alluded to, we'd get strikes and all the other crazy shit that goes with it. So, Jeff, these walking wounded, like the ones who self-transport themselves, to hospitals, it probably stands to reason they're going to go to the closest hospital to wherever the attack was. And it seems to me that just is like a compounding issue. And I wanted to get your thoughts on advice for people. Like if you're one of the walking wounded, but you're not on the verge of dying, maybe have the presence of mind to go to the next hospital instead of the one right beside. Just any general thoughts you have on dealing with that type of calamity.
A lot of it's going to depend on what time of day it is, too. If it's in the middle of the night, the hospitals may be the only option you have. If it's during the day, you've got urgent care. You've got the smaller clinics, smaller hospitals, or just your doctor's office if they're there. But I think, we always talk about having a good first aid kit at home. You may have to act like your grandparents and just maybe look at it and go, well, need to fix that up. I mean, a lot of times you think you need stitches. You don't. You can put a butterfly on it and tape it up real good. And a lot of times you're thinking about this may not be a permanent fix. It may be temporary. If you can stave off going to see a doctor for 3 or 4 days, maybe you've got antibiotics at home that you can use to keep an infection down. Maybe you've got a sling. You can immobilize that shoulder. Maybe you have a broken arm. You're going to have, and also you got to look at, what's the value of sitting outside of a hospital for 10, 12, 15, 16 hours, hoping to God someone will actually allow you in to treat you. I would venture to say you might be better off sitting at home, relaxed, calm down, triage the wound, or take care of the wound yourself to a certain extent if you can, and then wait and go when it's a little more sane. There's plenty of times my wife says you got to go see a doctor about that. Yeah, no, I don't.
Crazy glue works really, really well.
Crazy glue works fantastically well.
Just saying.
I have super glued so many cuts, and I have, I've cut myself. My wife's daughter joke, it's not a home improvement project until dad bleeds. I don't go. I just tend not to go to the doctor for that little stuff.
Yeah, I don't blame you at all. So, Randy, Jeff already touched on, the medicinal part of this, like antibiotics. So I want to get your thoughts now on our pharmaceutical dependence on foreign manufacturing, especially China and India in particular. Like, what happens to the domestic supply if it becomes exhausted because of mass casualty events? Where do we go for the meds at that point in time?
Well, it don't even have to be that. What if we piss China off at some point? Mm-hmm. The first thing they're going to do is say, well, we're just not going to send you more pharmaceuticals, and probably several other things as well. And it goes back to what I've already been talking about. And you got to ask yourself, we're the United States of America. We are the best country that's ever been in the history of the world. We are the richest, most prosperous country in the history of the world and of mankind. Why would we ever sub out our medicine for medical reasons? Why would we ever do that? You got to ask yourself why that is, because it don't make any sense. And even when we're doing good, how does that make any sense? Because I don't care how cheaply they make it over there, you still have to freight it back and forth. So regardless, I just don't get why we ever did that. But again, to me, it just leads to right here in this moment. And then we can't get what we need here in America, because as I've said all along, until they crush America, until they break our culture and break this country financially, until they actually get rid of the United States dollar, they will not be able to be successful in what they want to do next. So they have to take us out and out of the way to do that. And all of this is a way to do that, because again, if you don't have blood, people are going to die. And hey, it's beyond that as well. Let me just tell you what happens when you have a blood shortage, because I know firsthand experience. So I come home from Iraq. I got blown up. They had to do 3 blood transfusions while I was in Baghdad. And, I get out of the hospital a month and almost 2 months later, and somewhere right on the 3-month dot, exactly. And I still remember to this day, I'd already been to the hospital, and I was staying at the Palace Guest House, which is right outside Brooke Army Medical Center's hospital, and it's where you and your family stay. And so I'm at this guest house. I've already wheelchaired myself all the way back. And I get a phone call from infectious disease. I don't know what it is. I answer the phone. Hey, Sergeant Nance, this is infectious disease. We're up on the 7th floor. And I'm like, yeah, hey, how's it going? They said, well, we really need to talk to you. Can you come up to the 7th floor and see this? Look, I don't have no infectious disease. I don't have any of that. So they said, but we need you to come up here and talk. I said, well, hey, look, can't you just tell me over the phone what this is about? They made me go all the way back. So I go up to the 7th floor, right? And I get in front of the desk. And they say, well, Sergeant Nance, we have a little bit of bad news. When you got those 3 blood transfusions, we were very short on blood in Baghdad at the time. So the blood you received didn't go through all the filter processes and all the testing. And so now we're going to test you today. And every 3 months, we need you to come in and test. We're going to test you for AIDS and hepatitis and everything else. I blew my lid right there. I kid you not. I'm in a wheelchair. I'm only 185 pounds when I started off 239 when I got hit. And I'm a beanpole in this wheelchair. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to tell y'all something. If I just survived all this, and I get AIDS, I'm not going to kill myself. I'm going to come back and kill all of you. And they were like, Sergeant Nance, we need to call the psych unit. I'm like, no, in point of fact, you do not. I'll go ahead and go on, but this is and you know what I said. So I had to get tested for the rest of the year. Now, fortunately for me, it worked out. I didn't get AIDS or hepatitis, but when they run short on blood, they're still going to take blood. It's just not going to be tested. So you get what you get. And then, of course, if you don't get blood, we all know what happens then. So it's going to be no different with the medicine, because at some point you can bet that's in China's back pocket, and they are going to do it. I guarantee you they already have it mapped out. If this happens, we're going to do this. So, again, I go back to why in the hell would us as the United States, the best and most prosperous and smartest civilization and country in the history of mankind, why would we sub out our medication and many other things that we've done?
Sold out, completely sold out. Just quickly on this topic, if you go to ozio.com, so ozio.com/SD, S is in Sam, D is in David, you get 10% off. I now work with these guys. I still work with Jace, but I work with these guys because Jace actually fulfills the prescriptions for Ozio. So you're getting the same quality of pharmaceuticals, but you're getting them at a much lower price. I want to say if you go to ozio.com/SD, you can get the basic antibiotic kit, emergency antibiotic kit. I think it's for $178. The same one from Jace is $100 more than that, and it's the same meds. The one from Jace, there's a couple meds where they give you a handful of more quantity, but it's not much. It's a minor amount. So ozio.com/SD. JJ, pretty much a loaded question for you here, but what happens to elective surgeries, births, transfers that were supposed to be coming from another hospital because this other hospital has the specialists that are needed, when the whole place is tied up, like it's consumed by people who are victims of the mass casualty attack? I mean, it seems to me that there's a bunch of dominoes that just keep falling in this scenario.
Yeah, we saw that in the the pandemic. We saw all elective surgeries stop, and they were, quote, no, not necessary. Well, knee replacement, hip replacements, on and on and on. I need my Botox, so I need to get in there. So if you, Jeff, you think you were pissed off about finding out that you might maybe have AIDS, if I walk in there and it's time for my weekly or monthly shot in my cheeks and my forehead, and they tell me I'm sorry, well, they're going to see someone. You're going to see some Tasmanian devil going crazy in that hospital.
Well, you can do that as an outpatient in the doctor's office.
That's true. That's true. And then what, we have these things that are called Botox parties, where we just everybody injects themselves. I gotta leave you idiots with that on that one. Sorry, but that's true, Chris. It's important. I mean, what happens if my forehead starts to sag?
Yeah, I mean, you're deep. You're deep.
You won't be able to see. The skin will just cover his eyes.
Well, let me just
like a Shar-Pei.
Let me just throw this out there before you go, JJ. If you would like to be added to the invite list for a JJ Carroll Botox party, put one in the live chat. We'll make sure that you get all the details to attend that party.
Oh, look, took another hour abuse on a Friday evening. Thank you, guys.
Without Botox, he'd look like a bloodhound.
I mean, you look at all the ones. Look at the ones in the live chat. I mean,
I got one more story before you go, JJ. The funny thing is, as you mentioned earlier, when I got back to group, and everybody, of course, they already knew that, the thing had took off half my butt as it went by. So you know what they all wanted to see, right? Nobody asked about my legs or anything else. They're like, hey, buddy, when you get that J-Lo butt put on there, you need to come back and show us. I said, oh, no. Won't be no J-Lo model. If I go get surgery and get a butt, it's going to be the Brad Pitt model when he was on Troy.
Oh, my.
I never did elective surgery. I skipped it.
So for those of you out there listening, if you want to get in on our group discount for therapy because of comments like the one Randy just made, put it to in the live chat. I'll make sure you get our discount code for the group therapy session.
Oh, jeez. All
right.
Till next. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
We'll see you,
JJ.
All right. Stay safe.
Bye.
All right. Yeah, the rest of y'all don't go anywhere. We still have another segment left to go between the three of us here. It's the final segment, the Guardian response, becoming your family's first responder. When jihadis hit and the hospital system saturates, your family's survival depends on what you have pre-positioned, what skills you've trained, and whether your wife or older children can apply a tourniquet, pack a wound, and maintain an airway without you being there to talk them through it. A Guardian grade medical cache is not just a first aid kit. It's a layered trauma system that includes multiple tourniquets, Israeli pressure bandages, hemostatic gauze, chest seals, full IFAC per vehicle, so individual first aid kit, a redundant medication supply for chronic conditions, and the training to use all of that under stress. I'm going to tell you what, I've got two red first aid kits down here, but backpacks, and my mother fell beachside last year, and my cousin was with her, and it was at nighttime, and she called me and she said, hey, your mother fell. She went face first in the sidewalk. They were doing some construction and there was no cones marking it off, and she said she's bleeding pretty bad. We've called 911. So I come in here and I grab one of the red medical bags, and one of them is full of Chinese crap, and the other one is a really high quality kit from a guy who's a paramedic in Oregon. Jump Medic is the name of the company. Really cool guy. I grabbed the wrong one. I got there, the whole Jump Medic one, and I don't have any professional relationship, no affiliate stuff. But when you open the backpack, it unfolds into a T. So everything inside this backpack is readily accessible. And the one I grabbed, everything's jammed in there. I literally took it, turned it upside down, and dumped everything on the sidewalk because I couldn't find the stuff that I needed. So high quality first aid kit is an absolute, requirement, because under stress, I'm sitting here thinking, holy shit, we got to get over there, to my mother. And I grabbed the wrong one, and, shame on me for putting them beside each other like that. But anyway, the real multiplier is community in all of this, because guaranteed we've all got neighbors who are nurses, paramedics, former medics, combat veterans. I mean, that network is invaluable and irreplaceable, especially when things go haywire in this, corporate hospital. It's like a greed machine. I don't know what else to call it. It's just a money-making machine that cares more about the almighty dollar than people's well-being. And with that being said, before I come to Jeff for the first question, I want to show you all something. So let me get us on the right stage here. All right. So this is our Guardian community on my Element server. And you can see the volume of messages. I checked them around midday, and there's another 516 messages I haven't had a chance to check, but I want to show you something at the bottom here. These are all the different channels that we have, by the way. So down here to medical readiness, and you can see the volume of stuff in here. We have some medical professionals in here. Nurse Rachel, got to give her a shout out. The volume of information given to the community is just insane. There's another lady named, she goes by Numachan, Numachan. Her credentials are absolutely insane when it comes to this stuff. And they have just bestowed upon our community an incredible amount of knowledge and information that we all will potentially need if we're caught into one of these terrible situations. So with that being said, Jeff, what are the non-negotiable items that every American household should have, period? Like when it comes to this medical first aid stuff, what's non-negotiable? You just got to have it.
Well, you got to have an assortment of bandages. I mean, a large assortment of bandages. And, because if there's a wound, you got to cover it. Uncovered wounds get infected. You need, you need alcohol, alcohol, betadine, and hydrogen peroxide, because you need to be able to clean the surface of a wound. Alcohol, they're probably going to jump to the roof, but it works. Betadine is not as painful, and hydrogen peroxide is not painful at all. But you need some way to sterilize or clean up the exterior of the wound, and then use the bandage to just close the wound. And then you're going to need at least a topical antibiotic and probably oral antibiotics as well, because if there's a puncture wound, stab wound, that carries dirt, grime, grit, whatever into the body. If you can't get it out, which you probably cannot, not at home anyway, you're going to need a way to treat that, to keep that from festering and getting infected. And, is that going to save you if someone gets an arm blown off? Yeah, probably not. But you're going to need tourniquet. That should be part of it as well, so you can stop bleeding. And the hemocrit, the bandages or the powders or stuff that stop bleeding, great to have as well. But depending on the wound, you may not need that. But you should always have a tourniquet, always have plenty of bandages, to have some way to clean the exterior of the wound, and then antibiotics, external and internal, to stave off infection.
Yeah, so
that's minimal.
I'll let Randy, comment on this, but
he's probably got a defibrillator and an IV and
well, those are.
I was just going to say one thing is that as a bare minimum, not one tourniquet, 2 tourniquets really is the bare minimum, in my opinion. Randy, go ahead and mention anything else that you think is a bare minimum for the items that people should have, but do me a favor and carry on with that and add the bare minimum of training that somebody should have in your home or your group?
Well, I would say that you need, besides the bandages, and you do need a lot of them in different kinds, you're going to need, like I said yesterday, some kind of other clotting measures, because sometimes bandages aren't always going to do it. And of course, you always need to apply pressure. There's you can have some of those IDF bandages because they have a little fancy thing where you can tighten it off. So that helps cut off blood flow. You mentioned the tourniquets. Yeah, and you definitely need more, because the problem is, I go back to a story of the contractors back in the probably around 2006, 7, 8, somewhere in there. And they got caught on the freeway between the airport and Baghdad. And, then they separated themselves out a little bit. And then the traffic didn't move for hours. And, somebody eventually noticed them. And they had some guys that flanked them and got up with a couple of AKs. And, probably not even whole magazines, but they dumped enough rounds that everyone in the vehicle was shot. And three of them died from bleeding to death because they had enough wounds that they couldn't stop the bleeding. And that was with them in a car. As we mentioned earlier, you watch on TV and movies, cars deflect bullets. That is not true. It's not going to happen. They go right through. Even a pistol is going to come in and hit somebody inside. A rifle round is going through the other side. It's going to go in one and out the other side. So, I would say the bare minimum, because airway and breathing and blood and stopping, controlling bleeding, those are your three most important areas when you talk about emergency medicine, or, when you're trying to treat somebody in an emergency situation. So think about whatever supplies you're going to need for that, because we could sit here and list out an hour's, 2 hours worth probably of products that you would probably need, or if you could have, that would be optimum. Level of training, I would say even just any kind of like basic life-saving course would be far better than nothing, right? Obviously, we would like to have a fully trained medic in every household, and if not, a nurse or a doctor. Well, that's just not going to happen. But I would make note of those in my neighborhood that are. I would. And but you need, like, even in the infantry, one of the things they do to help medics out is they have basic life-saving courses. And and privates have to go through this. Why? Because it shows you how to control bleeding. It teaches you how to look and what to do with the airway and all that kind of stuff. And it's just basic stuff. But, it's good to know that basic stuff, because as we've mentioned many times, when the shit hits the fan, the adrenaline goes up and the blood leaves here and goes into here. So you're not thinking very clearly until you ask yourself some questions. But my point to that is, in a high stress moment, it's going to be hard for you to then go read and find all these details. And you probably won't even be able to look it up on the internet at this point. So I would say that go get some sort of basic life course. You probably can do these things online. I know you can now take CPR classes online. And CPR is way different than what I did when I was on AMIS. Now you don't even do any of the breaths. What's been proven is there's still enough oxygen in the blood, like if somebody just died, that as you keep doing compressions, then enough oxygen will get to the blood in that respect. And hopefully you're not very far out from an emergency room where some actual professionals can take over. But I would bet you could find some basic life-saving courses, or basic, maybe emergency medical courses online, to where you have an idea. And that's really all you need, because at this time, I don't think anybody's going to go out and get any formal training that's going to change the situation in your personal household. So, but there again, even most life-saving measures come down to common sense. The problem is, common sense is hard to find in those stressful moments when you can't think straight. So it's why you kind of want to have a plan, and you want to kind of already know the material before you get there. So that's what I would do. I was thinking there was some other stuff from the other day, and I don't remember. Let me see if anybody's made any comments. Not really. But just because Jeff mentioned them, if you can, because again, now today they have these little defibrillators that are in every business and every office. I don't know how much those things cost, but I didn't say this out loud, but of course, if things go down, if things really go bad, just remember where the last one you saw, and maybe you can go scoop it up in the interim of things going down. But having one of those defibrillators is not a bad idea, because those things actually do save lives, and I think they're not as expensive as they used to. When I was on an ambulance, these things were only in hospitals and on ambulances, and they were big, bulky, they were very expensive. But now we have these that are like first aid kits sitting on the wall next to the extinguishers in businesses. So I would look to those things. Well, somebody's saying it's $1,400. Yeah, it is kind of expensive, but if you have the money and the resources to do that, it's not a bad idea to have one of those in your home.
Yeah, well, I like your suggestion. If you make note of where one is relatively close to you, that's a good piece of advice for sure. We've only got a couple of questions left here in this final segment, and Jeff, I'm curious what your opinion is. I'm going to ask Randy from a different perspective because he has hands-on experience that you and I don't have. But what do you reckon the realistic ceiling is, for an injury where you absolutely have to go to the hospital versus potentially being treated at home by other people in your group? Like, where's that threshold?
A major head wound or a penetrating thoracic abdominal wound. If you have a penetrating wound in your gut, and if it's hit your liver or your spleen, you're going to need to go to hospital because you'll bleed to death. Same thing, major head injury. Yeah, you're going to, if you've got a skull fracture, you have an open wound in the head. Yeah, you're going to need to go to a hospital. Now, arms, legs, as long as it's not, arterial bleeding, you can probably pack that off and maybe wait a little while until things calm down. Just think about in the old days on the farm, people would get injured and they didn't necessarily go to the hospital, or the old West, hell, they had people who got shot and didn't go to the hospital. But something from here, from your groin to your neck and then your head, any penetrating wounds where you have organs, yeah, you're probably gonna need to go to the hospital.
Yeah, for sure. Good advice for sure. Now, Randy, let's change over to, from a combat perspective. And I know you weren't a combat medic per se, but
hey, I did stick a guy with an IV though, because the medics couldn't get it. Wow. I got it.
Right on. Well, that's interesting, because where I was going to go with this is I wanted to know the most common mistakes made by civilians with things like applying tourniquets, not treating, but trying to stabilize that penetrating trauma that Jeff just mentioned, especially in abdominal field.
Somebody made a comment here. Hang on a second real quick. One of the biggest mistakes, this something PHL_knives, and I guess he's replying to do something different. I didn't see the comment he made, but he's saying stop the bleeding before you start CPR, which is absolutely true. And certainly if they have wounds in their chest, you don't want to start CPR before you stop the bleeding, because guess what's going to happen every time you're pumping blood out. And so there is a little, stopping the bleeding, is a big one, but also even checking the airway, what I mean? So, people don't really think of that. If they have any kind of facial or head injury, you might want to check their airway, because it could be full of teeth, blood, the tongue, who knows what else. But, but before you start CPR, start that. And then the other part is when people are going into shock, they don't really realize it, right? The person definitely doesn't.
True,
but civilians don't. And you have to look when people start getting what you call lethargic, or not making sense, or they're starting to go unconscious a lot. They may be going into shock. And so, there's certain things you can do to help people with shock. There's different types of shock too, as you know. So I would, anybody, if y'all want to look up real quick, that's what I would do, and have some little notes of what anaphylactic shock looks like, and what you need to do with that. And then, what septic shock looks like. Because once somebody goes septic, what that actually means is now even their blood is poison to their body. And it is a serious, serious, serious deal when somebody goes septic. And, if you don't get help quick, it will kill you. So
What about mistakes, Randy? Like mistakes with the tourniquets and things like that? What are the most common mistakes?
Well, I was always taught that you've got to go 2 inches above the wound. You cannot stick a tourniquet right on the wound, but somebody was saying maybe you could. I've never heard that go up higher. That's a fact. And the thing about it is, like what I was talking about last night, when you're putting on a tourniquet, let's just take somebody's leg and it's your femur. They have an open fracture, a compound fracture, which means it's also an open wound. And if it cut that artery, as we all know, like if you were just to slice that artery wide open and do nothing, that person's going to bleed to death in about 2 minutes or less. And it is that fast. So the deal with that is you've got to get it up enough above it, because if you haven't got that tourniquet on when that person starts going into shock, what happens is all your arteries and veins pull and restrict, because now the body's trying to save itself. And what happens in the thigh, that thing will go up high enough that you can no longer tourniquet and cut the blood flow off, and that person will die. However, in all tourniquets, you've got to be above the wound. And the biggest thing, besides not notating that you put a tourniquet on there, the biggest mistake is not getting it tight enough. And trust me, we'll go back, like I said, to the thigh, because usually that's an open wound big enough. You see it bleeding, right? There is no, yes, it's still bleeding because you're watching it. And the thing about it is they'll put a tourniquet on, like even a belt, and they'll pull it as tight as they can and think that that's good. No, you have to look and make sure that no longer is blood even slowly seeping out. You got to crank that thing down. And trust me, it's painful, folks. Not to the person applying it, to the person that's being applied on. But you have to do it, because if you don't stop that bleeding, they will bleed to death. And certainly in situations like we're talking about, you might not even be able to get them to the hospital right away. So you definitely want to tighten it off enough. And then again, when you put a tourniquet on, you want to notate on that person what you put a T in the date and time. In combat, they will put a T in their own blood. That's a fact, because you don't have time to mess with stuff and may not have a marker. But I'm trying to think what other mistakes are really other mistakes are waiting too long, but that may not really apply in this situation, right? Because a lot of times people will think, oh, it's not that bad, or I've got more time. But unfortunately, in the situation we're talking about, when these things happen, if you're in one of those areas of the hospital shut down, it won't matter if you left in time, maybe sometimes. But, again, go back to making sure you're stopping the bleeding all the way. If someone needs CPR, first thing you definitely need to do is clear that airway and make sure it's clear. And beyond that, if you can get them to medical services, and certainly when they're in dire need of it, do it as soon as possible. Don't wait. Don't listen to them tell you they're okay, that type of thing. Because I think most mistakes that people really make is, like I just said, they either wait too long, or they think that it's not as bad, or we'll go tomorrow type of thing. You have to weigh that out of what's going on in that moment. And you can't always listen to the patient. Yes, you can listen to them where they're hurting and pain and this and that. But there are times a patient will tell you, no, I just want to stay here, when things are actually getting worse and they think they just need more rest. So, and certainly if somebody's getting lethargic, if you can get them to emergency services, you need to right away.
Solid advice, Randy. And you know what time of night it is, right? So 3, 2, 1. So it is time for the Carnival Practical Payoff. This is where we cover one item, one skill, one mindset shift relative to the topic du jour. And Jeff, I'll come to you first. Your choice: skill, item, mindset shift.
Item, get a first aid kit. Have a real first aid kit with a variety of things in it. Don't just go to the store. Let me buy some gauze. Let me buy this. because a good first aid kit will have stuff in it that you're going to go, oh crap, I didn't think about that. So, get one, get it. Don't get the little one that fits in a bag this big. Get a nice big first aid kit so that you don't have to worry. And then use that as the basis to start with, not to end with. Then go through and say, okay, I'm going to need, if it's not in there, I need tourniquets or neckties and stuff like that. Have them pre-set up. Neckties are great because silk is very, very strong. And, a short piece of dowel rod to twist it and tighten it, great. Look at extra gauze pads. If it doesn't have a triangular bandage that you can use as a sling, get one of those. I mentioned them the other night were bar mops. The clean white towels. Have them clean, keep them sterile, keep them wrapped in plastic, but they're good for just any number of things. But get a good first aid kit as a starting point.
That's great advice. I do the same thing myself. I do it with just about everything that I buy that's a kit. Then I add to it. Sometimes I take the stuff out that isn't high enough quality and I'll replace a couple of things, but it's a good starting point.
Yeah,
for sure.
I bought a bug out kit that I keep in my Jeep. And, it's got a small first aid kit. I mean, it's not a serious one, but it's got an axe, a hammer, 3 different fire starters, flashlights, lanterns. It's got all sorts of stuff, fits in a little backpack and shoves under the seat. And it's amazing how much crap you can cram in that thing.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And this is the company I was talking about. This guy's a paramedic. He's early 30s. He may have already moved. His family was going to move from Oregon to Tennessee to get away from all the wokeness. And really, really decent guy. But he built out his kits based on what he would have for a paramedic. And I have this one here, the Pro Gen 3. Obviously, there's ones that are a lot more, but I wanted to show you this. That's how the bag unfolds right there. So when you unzip it, here's a better picture. Everything is readily available. And I know there's other bags are kind of similar, but he has a patent on this particular bag. Really, really cool young man. I don't have discount codes. I don't get paid anything. I get sent a ton of stuff like this. I really like this kit. Jumpmedic.com. You might be able to find some sort of discounts online. By the way, again, I don't have them. I don't have a formal business relationship with them. So that being said, Randy, that leaves a skill or a mindset shift for you.
Well, I was going to say also look for trauma kit instead of first aid kit, right?
Good
trauma
point.
kit's going to be more developed. Your first aid kits could be the same ones we've had in our households forever and aren't going to do a dang bit of good. They just have a bunch of Band-Aids. And they do have their application. It just won't be for this. I would say, oops, my bad. I would say then, the funny thing is I already decided what I was going to say before Jeff even went, but it matches up perfectly. Because I would say same thing we talked about a few moments ago. Go out. If you don't know how to do CPR, you need to learn how to do CPR for adults, for kids, and for infants. Go out and take a basic life-saving course online because you can do it right from home. Again, so you know how to work on adults, kids, and infants because you're going to need to at some point. So that backs up with the medical kit. Learn how to use that medical kit properly and maybe not at a professional level, but enough that you might be able to save your loved ones or even yourself if you need be.
Yeah, great advice, Randy. Great advice. I was going to say something about a trauma kit as well, but I was actually going to ask you, should you look for one that says trauma kit as opposed to just a regular IFAC? I appreciate you addressing that. On the med side, once again, just ozio.com/SD. So ozio/SD. And that gets you 10% off. It's Jace's products. These guys are awesome to work with. I haven't been this excited about working with one of these companies in quite a while. Their stuff is like the bag that they put it in is chintzy. I went to close it and the bag broke because it's truly like an economy brand, but the meds in the bottles are the same Jace meds. They even say Jace right on them. You can't go wrong with it. So with that being said, I would, for a mindset shift, mine is as simple as it gets. You are your own first responder. You got to get your head wrapped around that when there is any type of mass casualty or not, you are your own first responder. I think back to the police chief in Canada who told people in whatever city he was the chief of that if somebody breaks in, don't do anything. Wait for us to get there because somebody had killed an intruder. And of course, they charged them in communist Canada.
Oh, wait a minute. Don't you remember, Chris? They said, hey, don't do anything, but observe everything so you can be a perfect witness.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's if you live, pal.
So you're going to sit there and wait for, I mean, whatever the response time is. They said what the response time is, and I don't remember, so I don't want to quote it, but it was 10, 12 minutes, something like that. You're DRT, man. You are your own first responder. Doesn't matter what the calamity may be. Before we go in any further, and I've only got a couple things for the sitrep tonight. Shout out for our good friends at carnival.com. If you sign up for a subscription, there's the thing right above Randy. You lock your meat prices in for 12 months. This is 100% American beef, chicken, and pork. No antibiotics, no histamines, no mRNA, none of that crap. 49% year over year wholesale price increases last year on beef. Avoid the increase and get it on your list because it's got a 25-year shelf life, by the way. I don't know anywhere else you can put your money and get a 49% year over year compounded ROI. So it's a really good deal because it's not like you're betting on a horse that may or may not come in. You're going to eat the stuff. And the reason that y'all haven't seen me eating any Wasatch Wagyu tonight is because I got so busy this afternoon. I was starving to death. Don't hate me for this. Don't think I'm a slob, but I ate 6 of the dill pickle back to back. I mean, you can't run a V8 on a gallon of gas. I had to, that's all there is to it. So, by the way, Greg also has a couple sales on right now. Let me pull one of them up so you can see it before we move into a very short sit rep. Shame on me. I should have had this up ahead of time. But anyway, here we go. These prices are insane, like absolutely insane. Check this out. 10 of these.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
50% off. Okay, so that's instead of $60, it's $30. But you can also use the discount code SD20, get another 20% off, $24 instead of $60. That's just insane.
That is good.
Absolutely insane price for super high quality Wagyu beef. Can't say enough good things about them. And I'll speak a little bit more with regards to Remnant coming up a week from Saturday, but I want to get into the sit rep now. So let's get started.
I've got one thing, Chris, real quick. I just want to show everybody the so hang on, let me make sure I want to say his name correctly. So this guy named Travis Van Andel reached out to me early last week and said he was going to send me something. So here it is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so Real American, Randy Nance, U.S. Green Beret. It's got the snake in flames. So apparently he's a what do you call this type of paint? Airbrush.
Oh,
so it's got 3 clear coats on it, and then we got the don't tread on me on the side. So, yeah. So I just wanted to, hey, thanks, Travis. This thing's awesome. Really appreciate it.
That's very, very cool. I hope you're not going to be an asshole and charge him a royalty for saying Real American. TM.
Well, he did send it to me, and this thing does look pretty nice, so.
So you're waiving the royalty fee?
Me and him have a what do you call it? A
negotiation?
A sequestered. We came to an agreement, but we can't disclose what it is.
Okay.
You have an NDA.
Yeah. There we go.
So I don't know if y'all caught this one or not. This is an hour ago. Armed man arrested Trump golf course near Trump National Golf, L.A., the site of the No Kings protest in March. Subject, 36-year-old Arizona man, Sean Steiner, rifle with Joker theme writing on it, 2 pistols, body armor, and a step stool. I'm not sure what the step stool is.
Yeah, I'd really like to know that part. What's the guy carrying a step? There had to be a plan for it, right?
Trying to find it here again. This is just breaking news, so it just ended up at the top of this. But that's all the information that I have right now.
I'm like, I get all the other stuff because that's what people do. But what do you need a step stool for?
I don't know.
Gun rest.
Maybe. Hey, there you go. That's a good one. That's very, very
Yeah,
small.
that makes sense. So from Bizarro World, Mayor Brandon Johnson, who has 130 cops on his protective detail, costing the taxpayers of Chicago $30 million a year. He says that restaurants have ties with slavery, so we need reparations.
Oh, goodness.
And you just watched an entire city council in transparency try to take wages away from the very people who are part of an industry that has its ties to slavery. Nobody's hiding from that. I am boldly declaring that we need reparations in the city, and that's why I'm funding it. And you just watched an entire
with your money.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
So
right.
it's Friday evening. We're into the sitrep. Whoever thinks this guy should just fuck off, put a 1 in the live chat. I mean,
He's an idiot.
sick and tired of this low IQ piece of shit. I was going to play this is too long, minute 41 seconds. Rare footage from the world's longest sniper shot confirmed 3,540 meters or 2.2 miles. Shot was taken by a Canadian JTF-2 operator, Dallas Alexander, in Iraq, 2017. That is no longer the world record. One of our guys blew well past that distance, but the Canadian guy did it with a 338 Lapua, which is that's one of my favorite long distance rifles. There's one sitting beside me.
Around.
Yeah, we did JJ Morris and we did a bunch of testing on panels. I think you guys know about this. I can't remember, but we were sent this panel by this company who shall remain unnamed, and they said that it was
got delivered.
Yeah.
They said it was a titanium plate.
Yeah, hang on. We're almost off.
They said it was a titanium plate.
I'm sorry, Chris.
Yeah, no problem. They said it was a titanium plate, but the first thing we did is put a magnet to it, and it went thump and stuck right to it. So clearly it wasn't titanium, number one. Number two, just for shits and grins, we hit it with everything from a 22 LR to a 9mm PCC to a 5.56 55 grain, a 5.56 62 grain with a green tip, 77 grain OTM. Then we stepped it up to a 7.62 by 39 from an AK. Then we went 308, 7.62 by 51. And then we went 6.5 Kardashian. And that was out of an RPR, Ruger Precision, which is a really decent bang for the buck's an amazing rifle. But anyway, and we took a poll. There was 8 of us there or something like that. And the poll was, well, it's not titanium, but it's deflected all of those rounds. Who thinks that the 338 Lapua will defeat it? JJ and I both said it will absolutely defeat that. And everybody else said not a chance. That thing is maybe steel, but it's damn near indestructible. JJ took the shot. It had a cross in the middle of the panel, and he hit it right in the middle of the cross, and it looked like somebody took it and put it into a drill press. Went it was freaking awesome. 250 grain, brass projectile. I think my chronograph picked it up a little over 3,300 feet per second at the at the muzzle. But anyway, check this out. Islamists target a Catholic bookstore in France, claiming it's fascist for selling the Bible, Christian books, and statues of Jesus and Mary. This is France, a third world shithole now. That's about enough of that shit.
I'd say don't laugh, people, because that's coming to us. We don't get ahead of this. It's
coming to New York City. It's already in Dearborn. It's already in Little Somalia, Minneapolis. Jeff, can the French turn this around, or are they SOL?
I think they're done because they don't have the balls to turn it around. I think they have the ability, they don't have the desire, and they don't have the guts. So no, they're done.
So they're just going to commit self-inflicted suicide, basically.
Yeah, pretty much.
Randy, your thoughts on the French here? Is there any saving them? I'm going to take that as a no.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I apologize.
No, you're good. I was just saying, is there any chance that the French can pull out of this tailspin?
I think Jeff's exactly right, and I think that, heck, I mean, let's just talk about what it is. Marcone, is he still their leader? I think he stepped down though, didn't he?
No, he's still there.
He's still there.
Yeah.
But this guy had a bag of Coke a few months ago. They were doing Coke at a meeting. I mean, this is the guy leading that country. And then you look at the stuff he said lately, really, that guy is allowing this to happen. So no, they're not going to stop it.
Keep talking for a second, because somebody asked about a brass bullet. I'm going to grab a 338 Lapua,
Okay.
but give me 2 seconds to grab it. Y'all just keep on talking about the France committing self-inflicted genocide.
Well, I mean, they've got, they had their colonies, and then they imported all these people from the colonies. But the thing is, their colonies were in the worst places. I mean, they were in Algeria, and they were in, sub-Saharan Africa. So, yeah, they got all these colonial yahoos that are just third worlders.
And then honestly, I think that, most of probably the real fighters in France got killed off a long time ago. Those, Napoleon got a bunch of dudes killed. And then you look at the World War I and II.
Yeah.
Maybe they're fighting. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
World War II, they didn't fight very long.
No, you're right about that. They did. But World War I, even like Verdun Manor, they took a huge loss.
They lost millions.
And they probably, what my point to that is, they might have killed off all their fighting lineages, the DNA.
Well, they didn't reproduce, so those genes were
gone.
Right on.
Yeah.
So check this out. These are from. Well, I'm not going to say who, because CommieTube might give me shit for promoting something, but so you'll see in the bottom left there, solid brass spun match grade. So they're solid brass, 250 grains, 3,300 feet per second. Check this bad boy out. That end is so freaking sharp that I've actually punctured my skin by accident on it before. It's pretty crazy. You can see that it's solid brass up close. It's got some all kinds of machining marks on it, like not bad machining marks, just showing where they've spun it down in a millwright machine. But anyway, it's pretty crazy ammunition. All right, moving on to the next one here. Let's see what next. From Texas, Randy. I don't know if y'all caught this or not. Muslim cleric opens Harris County Commissioner Court with Islamic prayer. So this is Houston. 58 seconds.
Commissioners, did you invite somebody?
Yes, so I'll be introducing our officiant today on behalf of Commissioner Garcia, who invited. We are honored and so pleased to welcome today Sheikh Walid Basyoni to give the opening prayer today. Sheikh is here from the Clear Lake, Nasir Bay area. He is a respected Islamic scholar, educator, and community leader known for his clarity, depth, and practical approach to teaching Islam. He serves as the Imam of Clear Lake Islamic Center and has been actively engaged in serving Muslim communities.
We're not a Muslim nation. That's not allowed.
Thank you. We please follow the rules of decorum here.
I am a Christian.
Just a moment, ma'am. Oh, just a moment, folks.
We believe in respect and inclusion here. He holds advanced degrees in Islamic studies.
All right, Commissioner Briones. Yes, ma'am. Commissioners, did you invite?
All righty, Jeff, you want to take first swing?
Well, yeah, is the guy giving her prayer, or is he not giving her prayer? It sounds like she's reading his resume.
Yeah. She reads his resume, then he does the prayer. So to me, okay, look, you want to have a Muslim cleric do a prayer. We have a Jewish guy do a prayer. You have a Catholic priest, an evangelical, so what? If you're going to have a prayer, somebody else can say the prayer. But you got to know who the guy is, first of all. If he's a lunatic, why are you giving him a forum? Well, I mean, I won't go down that rabbit hole right now. Randy, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, I'm with whoever the citizen was that spoke out, and what we need to do, and we hear about these types of things, they need to show up with like 100,000 people so we can all tell them this is a Christian nation, and you don't get to start a meeting off for the government with a Muslim prayer time. I don't care about we could talk about religious freedom, but that's not religious. That is manipulation and actually molestation of religious freedom. The reality is you can't go in any other country and do that. You go into an Islamic state and then want your fair share to be able to have a Christian prayer read before the meeting. It's not going to happen. And they might even kill you for that. So the fact is, you don't get to do it here either. And, it disgusts me that even in my own state, that's what they're doing. And there was only one person that spoke out. They probably got removed. But the reality is, until we stop allowing them to do it, they're going to keep doing it. As you mentioned earlier, that, in the airports, the mosque, and they probably gave them grants for those too, because now we know the state of Texas has given over $14 million in grants to build mosque in the state. And again, my question is, when's the last time the state of Texas gave a grant, again, a loan that you don't have to pay back to build a Christian church? We probably can't find it.
It's abhorrent behavior. But you want to talk about from bizarro world, listen to these two idiots. I am not playing this whole thing. Keir Starmer and Macron, who you just mentioned.
God.
Nick, listen to this. Nick Sorter says, after President Trump announced Iran agreed to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, UK PM Keir Starmer announced that the UK and France are leading a military mission to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, I don't even know what
They sending in the Boy Scouts?
I can't stand this friggin' clown, but I'm going to try and stomach him.
I'm sure they're going to send him a scathing letter.
Thanks very much, Emmanuel. We just had a very productive meeting, bringing together 49 countries around a very simple message and proposition that the world needs the Strait of Hormuz fully open, because that is how we keep prices down for our people and stop the global economic damage. So we've all agreed, there was real unity in the meeting that we've just had. We want to see a return to talks and a lasting agreement, including the reopening of the strait. We welcome the announcement that was made during our meeting, but we need to make sure that that is both lasting and a workable proposal. And if anything, it reinforces the need for the work that we've been doing this afternoon, because we're very clear that the mission that we're putting together is a defensive mission, and that comes after a ceasefire. So that's why we brought the international group together to indicate how we will play our part. And there are a number of elements. First,
I can't listen to this clown anymore. The mission they're putting together to open.
They're not going to do shit. They can't do shit. They don't even. Hell, their navy is just slightly bigger than Iran's, and Iran's is underwater.
They have 70,000 total members of their, whatever they call their Department of War or Defense. 70,000.
Ministry of Defense.
Ministry of Defense. Okay. And so Randy's side of the equation, we have well over 100,000 people in the SOF community, Special Forces community. I mean, I don't, Randy, do you want to talk about this asshole at all? It's your choice.
I really don't have, man. I'm with everybody else. This is just ridiculous, man. And I don't even know why they continue to put that stuff on the news here. Why bother giving them a platform anymore? But it's because they're on the same side.
Yeah.
All right. So one more crazy one, then I'll scroll down, see if I can't find something funny to put a smile on people's faces for the weekend. Breaking. Mayor Mamdani has just banned large celebrations of more than 20 people for America's 250th anniversary. Mamdani cited staffing shortages as the reason. He allowed over 1,000 Muslims to celebrate Ramadan in Times Square, but you're going to be charged if you have a celebration on 4th of July with more than 20 people.
Yeah, that ain't going to happen.
This guy can fuck off as well.
Yeah,
and if
absolutely.
You agree, put a one in the chat.
The other thing is, too, First Amendment, you have the right to gather peacefully. They have the right to free assembly, so they can assemble. They don't need the state's permission or the city's permission. So if 25 people want to get together, they can just say, fuck you. It's our First Amendment right.
Yeah, exactly.
And then sue his ass into oblivion.
Randy?
Yeah, I don't, man, this kind of thing, but it just goes to show, right, everything we've been saying about this guy. Because that is clear. I mean, if that doesn't tell you what's going on, I don't know what will.
So speaking of 4th of July, Randy, and you were probably living in the DFW area at the time as well, Jeff. Do y'all remember the 4th of July night of fire that they used to hold down in Enos, Texas, near Waxahachie at the Billy Myers drag race facility, the IHRA facility?
I heard of it. I never was down there.
I never went either.
It was as American as it gets. And we went this one time, and there was this guy who was in a 69 Chevelle, and he was going to jump 3 semi-trailers with a governor that limited the Chevelle to 70 mile an hour. And the only way he could pull it off would be them timing 5,000 pounds of explosives on the top of each semi to keep them in the air, right? So we were in the very front row, and the security comes along before they do this. It was a filming for America's Greatest Stuntman, and they moved everybody back 20 rows. And so we ended up in the 20th row, and we all thought that it was because it was on our side of the track, that if the guy, went off kilter, it was to save us. That sure as hell wasn't what it was. He got over that first semi, and they lit up those explosives, and it felt like somebody took a blowtorch to our face. I mean, the heat was just absolutely insane. So after he goes, I mean, all y'all remember the Why Ask Why Try Bud Dry thing, right? So the guy with that Peterbilt with 3 J24 jet engines on it, he comes underneath the building, and across the top, it had to be at least 100, 150 feet wide. Why Ask Why Try Bud Dry. And of course, it's a solid glass structure, right? That's where all the offices and shit are. He gets just in front of it, and he dropped some kerosene into the afterburners and melted the Why Ask Why Try Bud Dry sign to the glass. And I remember looking at it thinking, oh my God, I'd hate to be the son of a bitch who had to deal with that. I mean, they probably had to replace the glass. It was that bad. It was pretty crazy though. Anyway, I want to mention this one. I'm still looking for a funny one to wrap up, but this one's pretty crazy and just happened today. Police have shut down a park in Kensington as 2 drones containing radioactive and carcinogenic material found looking to target the Israeli embassy in London. Islamist Iranian-linked group Harakat Ashab al-Yemen al-blah, blah, blah has repeatedly taken, it's got 15 fucking syllables.
Well, you almost can't keep up with them anymore. There's so many. It's almost like the LBG whatever movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Did you see the one in Canada lately where the lady's like, we have a genocide of the MMM, blah, 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 like this, and it's a string of like 50 letters, and it's just wrong. It's genocide. And going,
that was one of the most concerning parts, is how easily that just rolled right off her tongue. Like
sitting there going, what in the fuck is that?
I did see that. It's crazy.
That was friggin' insanity. This one's kind of funny, that crazy lady, but let me find something even funnier. This one's really funny, but it's too long, where this crazy old lady doesn't like these guys fishing, so she takes away their poles and then she tries to bite them. You can't make this shit up. There's studies now that say that the people who took that thing because of Charlie 19, as time goes on, they end up with more and more mental imbalances, and that it's making them very angry. So compound that, pardon me, with SSRIs, and boy howdy. So let me see here. This one's not too bad, but it's okay. So Retards Down Under says, we'll end on this one. Watch this retard realize she's a retard in real life, in real time. You gonna hit me, bro?
Go on.
She's saying, go on.
Go on.
Go on.
Go on. Go on, you stupid dog.
Then she calls him a stupid dog. He's like, all right, careful what you wish for. You might just get it.
Yeah, look, yeah, baby, there's the face.
The oh shit face.
Hold on, did you hear the driver? She's like, it's a female driving. Are you going to get off now?
Are you going to get off now? Are you going to get off?
Yes. I reckon you are. Who's gone? There's. You see that right there? Watch. Look at the hand. There
The hand.
Oh,
yeah.
God.
This is what we call natural selection, folks.
Yeah, this is Darwinism at its finest.
Isn't it? Oh my God, that's freaking hilarious. So anyway, I will be back Sunday evening, usual time, 7 p.m. with the last Sea Heaven show for a while. And the reason it's going to be the last one for a while is because next Saturday and Sunday is going to be the launch of Survival Dispatch Remnant. It's a fictional Walking Dead type of audio podcast that'll be every weekend, following the trials and tribulations of the Smith family. There'll also be additional characters that you'll recognize, like Mike Glover and JJ Carroll, who are part of the story. And shit, I guess that's it. Other than there's 4 episodes left in the Long War series. So a week from tonight, we're going to wrap up this 140 episodes. I ditched 4 episodes so that we could get the final one out before the Remnant starts. And that means a week from Monday, we've got a surprise for y'all because we got the next thing coming that's coming after the Long War series. So a lot happening next week. Okay. We got 4 regular episodes. We got the launch of Survival Dispatch Remnant, survivaldispatchremnant.com. If you go there before it launches, you can get 20% off. It's going to be the one and only time I do a promo on this. This has been a pretty expensive production. $5.60 a month or $56 a year gets you 2 months free. And that will get you the podcast at 12 noon on Saturdays and Sundays instead of 7 p.m. for the general public. Plus, you will get the show notes. You'll get a special article with each episode each month. But beyond that, that's it. We'll be back. I'll be back Sunday night. We'll be back Monday evening. Between now and then, do me a favor. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. Click the notification bell if you haven't already done it on whatever platform you're on. This is Chris Evans signing off. God bless our law enforcement officers. God bless our military. God bless America.
God bless America.
God bless.
Enjoy the closing video.